The ocean hides dangers beyond imagination, where even experts can become prey. From a fatal great white attack off South Africa's coast to a chilling orca encounter in Alaska's icy fjords, these 6 true stories capture moments when curiosity met catastrophe, and the wild struck back without warning. In this video, we'll dive into 6 harrowing encounters that prove the sea's beauty often conceals its most merciless predators. On October 17, 2025, Alex and Mara Collins, both experienced divers in their early 30s, boarded a research vessel off the rugged South African coast, eager for a rare close encounter with one of the ocean's most formidable predators. The morning sun glinted off choppy, steel-gray waters, while the wind carried the salty bite of the Atlantic across the deck, tugging at loose equipment and hair alike. Alex, a marine biologist, had spent years studying apex predators, while Mara, a wildlife photographer, had traveled the world documenting dangerous species. This dive, however, was meant to be thrilling yet controlled, a chance to observe a great white shark in its natural habitat without putting themselves at real risk. The cage they entered had been reinforced, tested repeatedly by the crew, and suspended from the vessel by heavy chains and pulleys. It was a metallic fortress designed to withstand pressure, yet still vulnerable to the immense strength of the ocean's apex hunter. As the divers descended into the cold, blue depths, the water around them shimmered with fragments of sunlight that filtered through the waves, illuminating the sudden, eerie silence that fell beneath the surface. Fish scattered in every direction, sensing the presence of something far larger and more dangerous. Minutes passed with nothing but the quiet hiss of bubbles from their regulators and the rhythmic pulse of their own hearts echoing in their ears. Then a dark silhouette appeared, slowly materializing from the abyss, massive and sleek, moving with a predatory grace that betrayed power and intent. At 17 feet, the shark was enormous, far larger than any the couple had previously observed, its wide mouth lined with rows of serrated teeth that glinted even in the filtered sunlight. The predator circled the cage, its movements deliberate and probing, testing the boundaries of the metal enclosure and sending sudden jolts through the water that pressed against the divers' suits and masks. Mara's camera bobbed at her chest, but she could barely focus, her hands trembling as adrenaline surged. Alex reached out instinctively to brace against the bars, feeling the cage shudder under each passing sweep of the shark's muscular body. For a moment, it seemed as though the creature was simply investigating, a calculated inspection of the unfamiliar metal structure intruding into its territory. Then, without warning, it struck. The first impact came like a battering ram, the sound of twisting metal echoing faintly underwater as the cage tipped violently to one side. The sudden lurch threw Alex into the bars, the sharp metal biting into his shoulder through the thick neoprene of his suit. Mara collided with the opposite frame, the force knocking the air from her lungs and sending her mask askew. The cage, once stable, now swung precariously with each violent push from the shark, tilting like a toy under the assault of an unstoppable force. Water churned around them, turbulent and murky, flecked with debris and the first streaks of crimson that spread like ink through the blue. The shark returned again and again, ramming with precision, its jaws snapping against weakened bars, metal groaning and bending under the relentless pressure. Alex tried to position himself in a corner to protect Mara, pulling at the chain links and pressing against the frame as the predator's massive head collided with their fragile sanctuary. Mara fought to remain upright, her hands gripping the bars, her knuckles white, her mind a torrent of fear and disbelief. Outside the cage, crew members pounded the water with thick poles, shouted warnings, and tried to distract the predator, but each intervention was met with the shark's brute force. It was a war of sheer physicality, the couple trapped in a deadly rhythm of survival, as the shark's power overwhelmed the reinforced metal meant to protect them. Every strike sent shudders through the cage, warping the frame further and weakening points that had been marginal under normal conditions. Alex could see the shark's eyes now, black and unyielding, locked on them with an intensity that stripped the moment of hope. The water around them boiled with the predator's presence, each motion of its tail sending waves through the surrounding water, each bite threatening to tear through the steel barriers. Mara tried to focus on their situation, desperately searching for any opening, any chance to maneuver. Still, the confined space offered no relief, only the constant, oppressive force of the creature pressing in. Minutes stretched like hours as the attack continued, the sea turning dark with streaks of blood and sediment as the couple struggled to hold themselves upright. The cage twisted violently, chains creaking under the tension, and for a moment it seemed as though it might collapse entirely. Crew members on the boat fought to maneuver the winches, lower lines, and drag the cage closer to the surface, but every movement risked further provoking the predator. The great white, relentless and unforgiving, maintained its assault with a precision that bespoke both intelligence and raw instinct, ramming, biting, and circling with a rhythm that left no room for error. By the time the crew managed to guide the battered cage back to the safety of the vessel's side, both Alex and Mara had suffered catastrophic injuries, and despite immediate attempts to render aid, neither survived the ordeal. Blood mixed with seawater in a silent testament to the overwhelming power of nature. The sudden, stark reminder that even careful preparation could not always mitigate the danger of confronting one of the ocean's deadliest predators. Investigators later classified the event as an extreme attack, emphasizing the unpredictable behavior of great whites and the inherent risk in close-quarters encounters. The incident sparked urgent reviews of cage diving protocols and safety standards, prompting stricter regulations and reinforced cautionary measures across South Africa's shark tourism industry. Still, for Collins, the encounter had ended in a tragic collision of human curiosity and primal force. In the aftermath, their friends and colleagues reflected on the harrowing scene, recalling the couple's years of experience and enthusiasm for marine life, and acknowledging that no level of expertise could have fully prepared them for the raw power they faced beneath the waves. Their story served as both a cautionary tale and a tribute to their daring spirits, a reminder of the fragile line between adventure and catastrophe in the untamed depths of the ocean. On August 12, 2023, off the sun-drenched coast of Oahu, Hawaii, Dylan Reeves paddled beyond the crowded reef break, seeking the solitude and rush of a perfect wave. At 28, Dylan had surfed the Pacific since his teens, his lithe frame and strong shoulders accustomed to the relentless motion of the ocean, and his eyes constantly scanning the horizon for swell and wind shifts. That morning, the waves were turquoise and glassy, shimmering under the early sun, and a light trade wind tugged at the surface, carrying a scent of salt and seaweed that seemed almost intoxicating. He had been alone for nearly an hour, the distant shouts of beachgoers fading behind him, as he carved through the gentle peaks, anticipating the thrill of catching a ride back to shore. Then, something dark moved beneath the water, slicing through the turquoise with a smooth, deliberate glide that felt unnatural. A shadow too large and precise to be a typical fish. Dylan's eyes caught the shape just as it shifted closer, and a sudden chill raced down his spine, though he could not yet identify the threat. The shadow surged forward faster than instinct suggested possible, and in an instant a massive tiger shark lunged. Its enormous jaws clamped onto the nose of his board, snapping it in half like a brittle branch. Dylan was hurled into the water with explosive force, tumbling beneath the surface as bubbles and spray erupted around him. His limbs flailed, striking water and air in panicked rhythm as the predator circled, its sleek, striped body cutting through the waves with terrifying precision. Adrenaline ignited every nerve as Dylan fought to surface, his lungs screaming for air, while the shark's head rose repeatedly, jaws opening wide in a blur of teeth that reflected sunlight like sharpened knives. The first bite had destroyed his board, but now the predator tested him directly, snapping at his arms and kicking up frothy water with violent swipes of its tail. Pain seared through his left arm as a glancing bite tore through neoprene and flesh, and a deeper cut along his calf throbbed as he fought to stay upright in the churned sea. Each movement seemed to provoke the shark further, its movements confident and predatory, a reminder that in these waters man was not the dominant force. As Dylan struggled, the water around him turned red, streaks of blood mingling with the blue, drawing attention he did not want. From below, another shadow emerged, drawn by the commotion, a second tiger shark drawn to the scent and thrash of panic. The presence of a second predator narrowed the margin for error to almost nothing. Dylan's mind raced, every instinct screaming survival, every muscle straining to keep him above the teeth of these hunters. His heart pounded with the knowledge that if he misjudged a movement, if he paused even briefly, he would not survive. Desperation brought clarity. Spotting a floating remnant of his broken board, Dylan lunged, grabbing it with one hand and using it as a makeshift shield. The shark lunged again, snapping at his legs, but the board absorbed the blow, deflecting the predator just long enough for Dylan to push and twist, turning the weight of the shark against itself. Each strike and shove was measured yet frantic, an improvisation born of sheer terror, as he fought to create space between himself and the predators circling him. Blood and seawater swirled together, painting a violent tableau that stretched in every direction, each wave a potential weapon or trap. Paddling with every ounce of strength, Dylan maneuvered toward the shore, using the board to shield and propel himself, his body screaming with exhaustion and pain. The sharks followed intermittently, hesitant but persistent, their powerful tails churning the water and forcing him to adjust constantly. His vision blurred from salt, blood, and adrenaline. Yet he never allowed himself to falter, calculating every stroke and every tilt of the board to maintain momentum while keeping the predators at bay. From the shoreline, a few swimmers noticed the struggle, their calls barely audible over the surf and wind. A rescue boat, alerted by frantic beachgoers, roared toward the spot, the outboard motor slicing through the waves as Dylan summoned the last reserves of strength. The sharks lingered for a final testing moment, circling and snapping, before retreating into the deeper blue, leaving Dylan battered, bloodied, and gasping as the crew reached him. He was hauled aboard, every muscle trembling, every wound throbbing. The reality of survival settling in as the adrenaline began to ebb and exhaustion took over. Though he survived, the injuries were severe. Deep lacerations marred his arms and legs, scars etched permanently across his left forearm and calf, a vivid reminder of the close encounter. Hospitalization was long, the recovery arduous, but Dylan's knowledge of his own body and his relentless will to survive had carried him through an ordeal that few could imagine enduring. Officials later warned that tiger sharks had been unusually active along that stretch of Oahu's coast that week, speculating that seasonal feeding patterns had driven them closer to shore than normal, while urging surfers, swimmers, and divers alike to exercise heightened caution. Researchers noted that the combination of disrupted currents and abundant prey had likely created an exceptional window of opportunity for these predators, a circumstance as rare as it was dangerous. For Dylan, the experience would remain indelibly etched into memory. Every wave thereafter carried the echo of teeth and water, every swell a reminder of the precarious balance between human curiosity and the unpredictable force of nature. Survivors, rescuers, and scientists alike recounted the event in the months that followed, not just as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to the raw, uncompromising power of the ocean and the fragile line between life and death, when man faces a predator evolved over millions of years to dominate its domain. On February 19, 2024, Dr. Elena Marquez, a 34-year-old marine biologist with years of polar experience, carefully maneuvered beneath the thin, fractured ice of the Antarctic peninsula, intent on collecting tissue samples from a small colony of Adelie penguins, clustered along a narrow channel. The wind above had been slicing across the frozen landscape, carrying the scent of brine and ice, and Elena's gloved hands gripped her tools with precision as she noted each specimen, cataloging it in her waterproof journal. Her black neoprene dry suit insulated her against the numbing cold of the sub-zero water, and her hood and mask sealed the warmth, though each breath still came in short, controlled bursts. The water below, crystal clear yet deceptively dark in places, reflected the jagged patterns of the ice above. Elena knew that the environment, while beautiful, was unforgiving of any mistake. She moved slowly, aware of every shadow, every subtle movement beneath the surface. Normally, the penguin colonies were undisturbed by her presence, as they were accustomed to humans working carefully and respectfully among them. Today, however, a ripple of tension passed through the water before she could place a sample into her waterproof case. A shadow larger than any penguin swept past, gliding with smooth, deliberate power, a form that seemed impossibly fast beneath the frozen expanse. Elena's heart skipped a beat, her instincts flaring, but she initially assumed it was a large piece of ice, or one of the nearby seals she had seen earlier. That assumption was shattered instantly when the massive predator lunged. A leopard seal, sleek and muscular, moved with terrifying speed and precision, its dark eyes locking onto her leg before she could even react. Its powerful jaws clamped around her neoprene-covered limb, the force jolting her backward with shocking intensity. Cold water rushed over her face as she struggled to regain balance, muscles straining to resist the animal's pull. Her dive knife was in her hand, and with a mix of fear and adrenaline, she jabbed at the seal, trying to push it away from her leg. The creature shook violently, attempting to drag her toward a small, jagged ice floe above, testing her strength against its own formidable power. Each movement sent waves through the icy water, disorienting Elena as her lungs burned and her muscles screamed. The attack lasted only several tense seconds, though in the chaos it felt like an eternity. Elena twisted, kicked, and jabbed with everything she had, using her gloved hands to wedge against the seal's head and shoulders, finally forcing it to release her leg. She didn't pause to catch her breath. Instead, she propelled herself upward toward the nearest thin ice opening, her movements swift and controlled despite the pain radiating from deep puncture wounds. The leopard seal lingered for a moment, eyes tracking her as if evaluating whether to pursue, then retreated beneath the surface with a smooth flick of its powerful tail. Above, the Zodiac boat carrying her colleagues noticed the disturbance, a splash and frantic bubbles catching their attention. Two researchers leaned over the side, shouting and brandishing poles to keep the animal at a distance, while Elena surfaced, gasping and shivering violently from the cold and exertion. She was quickly hauled aboard, her arms trembling uncontrollably, teeth chattering beneath her mask as the severity of her injuries became apparent. Deep puncture wounds marred her left leg, and cuts along her forearms reminded her of the seal's raw strength. The cold had seeped into her core despite the dry suit, and the combined shock of the attack left her pale and shaking, but she was alive. Once safely on the Zodiac, her colleagues wrapped her in thermal blankets and began preliminary first aid, stabilizing the wounds before heading back to the main research station. The ride across the icy waters was tense and silent, broken only by Elena's labored breathing and the occasional glance toward the area where the leopard seal had disappeared. Despite the severity of the attack, she remained aware of her surroundings, noting currents, ice floes, and other wildlife. Even amid trauma, a scientist cataloged the behavior of the predator for later analysis. Medical staff at the station treated her injuries, stitching punctures and cleaning deep abrasions, all while monitoring for hypothermia. Elena's resilience and physical conditioning helped her body endure the cold and the shock. Over the following days, she recovered steadily, though the memory of the leopard seal's sheer power remained vivid and haunting. Scientists later reviewed the incident, noting that leopard seals primarily hunt penguins and fish. Still, opportunistic attacks on divers can occur when the animal is curious, feels threatened, or encounters humans in confined spaces beneath ice where escape routes are limited. The combination of her proximity to the penguin colony, the shallow water under thin ice, and the seal's natural inquisitiveness had created a rare, dangerous situation that could have easily ended differently. For Elena, the event became a powerful reminder of the unpredictability of nature, even for those with years of experience in extreme environments. Every dive after that carried a heightened awareness, a respect for the strength and intelligence of the predators she studied. Colleagues recounted the attack in subsequent training sessions, emphasizing the need for constant vigilance, appropriate emergency procedures, and an understanding that even the most seasoned scientists are vulnerable when confronted with the raw force of the animal kingdom. Her survival, though marked by physical scars and a lingering sense of vulnerability, became both a cautionary tale and a testament to human endurance, highlighting the razor-thin margin between observation and danger in the unforgiving Antarctic waters. On May 16, 2007, amid the vibrant sunlit waters of Komodo, Indonesia, Thomas Caldwell, a 29-year-old tourist with a keen curiosity for marine life, drifted over a sprawling coral reef, mesmerized by the kaleidoscope of color beneath him. Schools of parrotfish shimmered in green and blue, while delicate sea fans swayed gently in the current, casting ever-shifting shadows on the sandy seabed. Thomas had snorkeled many tropical waters before, but the reefs here were said to hold hidden wonders, and he had eagerly anticipated the chance to explore the nooks and crannies of this living coral maze. His mask and snorkel kept him afloat, and his gloved hands reached out tentatively, brushing over the textured surfaces of coral. He inspected clusters of small, vividly patterned shells and mollusks, documenting each discovery in his mind, as though cataloging an underwater museum. Drawn by a crevice between two jagged rocks, Thomas leaned closer, intrigued by the unusual arrangement of shells nestled in a shadowed pocket. His fingers probed gently, slipping into the narrow gap to lift a small cluster, and for a moment nothing stirred. The water was warm and clear, light dancing off every surface, and he was unaware of the tiny predator that had been waiting, coiled beneath the rocks in stillness. Without warning, a blue-ringed octopus, no larger than a human fist but lethally potent, struck with lightning speed, biting the tip of Thomas's right index finger. The pain was almost imperceptible at first, a faint prickling sensation masked by the thrill of discovery. Still, within moments, the deadly neurotoxin began to spread through his bloodstream, racing faster than he could comprehend. Thomas's fingers went numb, then his hand, and gradually a creeping weakness spread through his arms and legs. The muscles he had relied on instinctively to swim and tread water no longer responded as expected, leaving him struggling against the gentle currents that now seemed insurmountable. Panic flared in his chest as he realized he could no longer signal effectively, his arms flailing uselessly as he tried to stay afloat. The vibrant reef around him, once a world of wonder, blurred in his eyes, and his lungs burned as he gasped for air that came only in short, desperate bursts. Each movement felt heavier than the last, as if the water itself had thickened, a viscous barrier constraining his failing strength. Nearby snorkelers, initially focused on their own exploration, noticed the sudden distress, a frantic thrashing and muffled gurgling that cut through the rhythmic lapping of the waves. Their attention snapped to Thomas as he drifted partially submerged, unable to lift his head fully above water, the tip of his finger still glistening where the bite had occurred. Instinct and fear propelled them forward, reaching him with urgency born of sheer necessity. Hands gripped him under the arms, lifting and stabilizing him against the current as they began to drag him toward a waiting boat anchored a short distance away. Thomas tried to articulate his situation, but his voice had become weak, slurred, and his body was rapidly succumbing to the neurotoxin that attacked the nervous system with ruthless efficiency. The boat loomed closer, its hull cutting through the turquoise water. The rescuers maneuvered Thomas aboard, laying him on the deck as adrenaline and exertion left them all drenched in sweat and seawater. He was trembling violently, his limbs limp, eyes wide with a growing silent terror as paralysis spread inexorably upward from the bite. Fellow snorkelers and the boat crew worked frantically, applying CPR in an attempt to sustain life, their movements precise but desperate, guided by the knowledge that every second counted against the accelerating effects of the venom. Thomas's chest heaved weakly, the labored gasps barely moving air, as the once playful turquoise waves became a backdrop to the sudden, terrifying fragility of human existence. Despite immediate intervention, the toxin had advanced too far. Thomas's breathing grew increasingly shallow, the rhythmic pulse of his heart faltering as the muscles controlling respiration failed. The boat raced toward the nearest clinic, the crew maintaining CPR, shouting instructions, and urging the vessel onward through the rippling, sun-sparkled waters. The bright sky above contrasted violently with the life-and-death struggle unfolding on deck, the serene reef now a silent witness to the lethal precision of nature's design. Upon arrival, medical personnel attempted rapid stabilization, intubation, and advanced life support, but the neurotoxin had already paralyzed critical functions. Within minutes, Thomas succumbed to respiratory failure, leaving rescuers and companions stunned by the speed and severity of the attack. Authorities later issued warnings to tourists, emphasizing that even tiny, visually striking octopuses such as the blue-ringed species could deliver lethal bites, particularly when handled or disturbed. Researchers noted that the creature's aposematic coloration, vivid blue rings appearing as a warning, was often overlooked by inexperienced divers and snorkelers, who assumed small size equated to harmlessness. They stressed that the reefs of Komodo, while teeming with marvels, were also home to predators whose defense mechanisms, evolved for efficiency, could kill an adult human within minutes if provoked or mishandled. Divers and snorkelers were urged to respect the natural boundaries of marine life, to avoid inserting hands into crevices or lifting objects without caution, and always to maintain awareness of the hidden dangers lurking in vibrant coral environments. The incident became a grim lesson in both human vulnerability and the absolute potency of nature, a reminder that even seemingly innocuous creatures could wield a lethal combination of stealth, speed, and biochemical weaponry. Fellow tourists and local guides recounted the scene for months afterward, describing the sudden terror and the futile struggle to maintain control as a cautionary tale for others who sought the thrill of close encounters with exotic wildlife. Thomas's story endured not only as a tragedy, but also as a stark testament to the delicate balance between curiosity and survival in the underwater world, where beauty and danger exist side by side, each second measured against instincts honed over millennia. On September 14, 2025, under a moonless sky along a quiet bayou in southern Louisiana, Marcus LeBlanc waded waist-deep through murky, brackish water, searching for crabs among the tangled roots and silted channels. The air was thick with humidity and the earthy scent of mud and decaying vegetation, punctuated by the distant croak of frogs and the occasional rustle of nocturnal birds. Marcus had hunted crabs along these waters for years, his bare hands skilled at feeling through the muddy floor, his boots steady against hidden snags and submerged branches. Tonight, however, conditions were unusual. Heavy rainfall over the past week had swollen the bayou, sending fresh water downstream and drawing bull sharks far upriver, a phenomenon locals had been warned about. Still, Marcus had not fully considered as he methodically worked the shallow waters. He moved slowly, scanning the dark, reflective surface for movement among the clumps of reeds and roots, the soft splash of water around his knees punctuating the otherwise silent night. A flashlight perched on a nearby piling offered only intermittent illumination, and the blackness of the water beneath made the depth and shapes beneath him almost impossible to gauge. Marcus felt the familiar tug of the mud beneath his boots and reached into a cluster of submerged roots, pulling up a promising haul of blue crabs, their claws snapping defensively. He hummed softly, thinking only of the quiet, routine rhythm of the task, entirely unaware that something larger and far more dangerous lurked in the shadows just a few meters away. Then, without warning, a massive form surged upward from the depths, sleek and powerful, cutting through the water with the precision of a predator that had hunted for millions of years. A bull shark, its gray back blending seamlessly with the night-darkened water, lunged at Marcus with explosive speed, clamping its enormous jaws onto his right calf. Pain erupted instantly, white-hot and shocking, and Marcus's scream was swallowed by the night as he thrashed violently, trying to kick and twist free. The murky water churned around him, turning reddish-brown as the first blood from deep puncture wounds swirled into the current. The shark shook its head violently, a bone-rattling motion that tested every ounce of Marcus's strength. He felt the teeth scrape along his leg repeatedly, each contact a brutal reminder of the predator's raw power. Mud, water, and blood mixed in a whirlpool around him, reducing visibility to nothing as he flailed, striking the shark with fists and knees in desperation. The animal, likely startled by the sudden frantic resistance, released its grip after what seemed like an eternity, retreating into the black shadows of the bayou, leaving Marcus trembling, bleeding, and barely able to maintain his balance. Heart hammering, lungs burning, and vision blurred by both adrenaline and the dark water, Marcus struggled toward the muddy bank. Every step was agony as his injured calf throbbed with deep, jagged pain, each movement sending searing jolts up his leg. He grabbed onto a cypress root to steady himself, water sloshing against his waist as he gasped for breath and forced his body upward, dragging one leg after the other until he finally stumbled onto firmer ground. Trembling uncontrollably, disoriented from blood loss and shock, he reached for his phone, his hands slick and shaking, dialing local emergency services as he leaned against a tree for support. By the time paramedics arrived, Marcus was pale and sweating despite the night air, his breathing rapid and uneven, his calf a swollen, jagged mass of puncture wounds. They applied immediate first aid, dressing the wounds and immobilizing the leg before rushing him to the nearest hospital. Surgeons worked quickly to clean, stitch, and repair deep lacerations, noting that the bite had likely severed small muscle fibers and damaged tendons. But fortunately, Marcus had survived with no life-threatening arterial damage. The event left both physical scars on his leg and a lingering psychological mark, An acute awareness that even routine, familiar tasks could be violently interrupted by the unpredictable movements of apex predators. Authorities later emphasized that bull sharks, unlike most other species, are capable of tolerating both freshwater and shallow water conditions. In unusual circumstances, such as heavy rainfall and high tides, they can move far upstream into areas considered safe for humans. Activities as commonplace as nighttime crab hunting, wading, or swimming in normally shallow bayous can unexpectedly become dangerous when environmental factors draw these predators closer to human activity. Experts noted that bull sharks' ambush tactics are highly effective in low-visibility conditions, especially at night. Their sensory adaptations give them a decisive advantage over humans, making any encounter potentially lethal. For Marcus, the event became a stark lesson in humility before nature's raw force. Every splash of water, every ripple in the bayou now reminded him of the razor-thin line between routine life and life-threatening danger. Local fishermen and crab hunters recounted the attack in community meetings, emphasizing vigilance, the importance of lights and lookout partners, and the unpredictable behavior of bull sharks during seasonal surges caused by rainfall. Marcus himself returned to the bayou months later, carefully and cautiously, but never at night, always aware that the shadows could conceal immense power beneath the still surface. The attack also prompted local authorities to enhance warnings and signage along the bayou, explaining that even shallow waters, where most people felt secure, could host apex predators capable of ambushing unsuspecting humans. Researchers highlighted that while bull sharks do not actively hunt humans, opportunistic attacks can occur under unusual conditions. Human activity near high-risk areas must be managed carefully to prevent further incidents. Marcus's survival, while remarkable, underscored both the danger and unpredictability of interacting with these animals, demonstrating that even the most familiar environments can conceal sudden threats when nature shifts unexpectedly. By the time the wounds healed, Marcus had transformed his experience into advocacy. He shared his story with other locals and visited wildlife enthusiasts, stressing caution, preparation, and respect for the animals that inhabit these waters. The incident remained vivid in memory: the cold, dark bayou, the sudden strike of powerful jaws, and the sensation of being dragged helplessly through water that had always felt familiar, now redefined as a zone where respect for nature's unpredictable strength could mean the difference between life and death. On July 28, 2022, Samantha Hayes, a 32-year-old wildlife photographer and seasoned kayaker, glided silently through the labyrinthine fjords of southeastern Alaska, her bright orange kayak cutting through the dark, glassy water as mist rolled off snow-capped peaks. The morning air was sharp and cold, carrying the faint scent of salt and pine, while seabirds wheeled overhead, their cries echoing across the fjord walls. Samantha had spent years capturing remote wilderness on camera, and today's mission was to photograph marine mammals in their natural habitat, particularly orcas that had been spotted near the inlet. Her dry suit insulated against the icy water, and her gloved hands gripped the paddle with practiced ease as she scanned the waves, eyes alert for movement beneath the surface. After paddling for nearly an hour, she spotted a pod of orcas breaching and diving not far from her path. Her heart quickened, both from excitement and professional focus, as she slowed the kayak to frame the animals in her camera's viewfinder. A massive bull orca rose alongside her kayak, its black and white markings crisp even from a distance, and Samantha leaned forward, intent on capturing a close-up shot. The surface of the water was glassy but deceptive. Each small movement of the kayak caused subtle ripples, seemingly minor, yet enough to attract attention from the intelligent predator beside her. Without warning, the large male surged against the kayak, striking with a force that tipped her into the icy water. Cold pierced her dry suit immediately, and shock coursed through her body as she gasped and struggled to orient herself beneath the waves. The kayak bobbed and spun beside her, half submerged, creating a temporary barrier between herself and the curious orca. The animal did not bite, but its presence was overwhelming, powerful, and unpredictable. It circled closely, nudging her leg with its snout and pressing against the overturned hull, with a strength that threatened to roll her further into the frigid fjord. Samantha fought to maintain composure, kicking and twisting to keep the kayak between herself and the orca, using it as a shield against the animal's probing pushes. Her camera floated nearby, tethered by a strap, as she tried to keep track of both her equipment and her own position in the water. Each movement caused the orca to adjust its approach, sometimes thrashing the water with its tail, sending cold waves crashing over her shoulders and splashing into her dry suit hood. The creature's intelligence was apparent in the way it tested boundaries, nudged and prodded, and circled with patience and precision, seemingly assessing the small human and her craft. Minutes stretched with a weightless tension, Samantha's limbs trembling as she kept a steady focus on her breathing, trying not to panic. At the same time, the orca maintained a tight perimeter around her. The icy water rapidly sapped her strength, and her body began to stiffen as adrenaline and cold combined, making every movement laborious. She pressed her back against the submerged side of the kayak and kicked outward when the orca came too close, forcing it to veer momentarily while she repositioned herself to avoid being pinned. The creature's sheer size and power made every adjustment a struggle, and the fjord seemed to close around her, the cliffs reflecting sound and movement with a disorienting echo. Finally, after several tense minutes, the orca lost interest. With a final push against the kayak, it broke contact and glided gracefully away, diving and surfacing in the distance, leaving the water eerily still except for the residual ripples. Samantha exhaled shakily, muscles trembling, lungs burning from exertion and cold. Slowly, she managed to pull herself back into the kayak, her legs numb and her body bruised from the repeated nudges and spins against the hull. She righted the craft, shivering uncontrollably as she wrapped herself in a thermal blanket from her emergency kit, still trying to steady the camera and assess the state of her equipment. Her hands were stiff, fingers trembling from exposure and adrenaline, but she was unharmed aside from bruises and minor abrasions from the kayak itself. She paddled cautiously toward shore, keeping a vigilant eye on the water, her pulse gradually slowing as the danger receded. The encounter left her shaken, the raw, intimate power of the orca vividly imprinted in her mind. Every movement she had made in the water had been critical, every decision between shielding, kicking, and holding her position a matter of seconds, that could have determined whether the incident ended safely or disastrously. Marine biologists later explained that orcas rarely attack humans intentionally. Their diet primarily consists of fish, seals, and other marine mammals. However, curiosity and sudden movements near small boats can create dangerous situations even for experienced paddlers, especially when a large, dominant male is involved. The orca's behavior was consistent with investigative, non-aggressive tendencies, as it tested a foreign object in its environment, the kayak and its human occupant, while assessing its boundaries and responses. Experts emphasized that even highly skilled paddlers could encounter similar hazards. They recommended maintaining distance, minimizing sudden motions, and avoiding direct approaches when photographing or observing these intelligent, strong, and inquisitive predators. For Samantha, the encounter became a powerful reminder of the unpredictable nature of wildlife and the margin between curiosity and danger. She reflected on every decision she had made, from positioning the kayak to leaning forward for a shot, realizing how subtle movements could have triggered aggression or led to more perilous outcomes. The fjord, which moments before had seemed like a serene sanctuary for photography, had transformed into a high-stakes environment, testing skill, instinct, and nerve. Weeks later, when reviewing her photos and recounting the experience to colleagues, Samantha described the sensation of power and intelligence emanating from the orca, the force of its body against her kayak, and the rapid mental calculations required to avoid harm. Her story became both a cautionary tale and a testament to human resilience and the respect demanded by nature's larger-than-life inhabitants. Every paddle stroke afterward carried heightened awareness, an understanding that even the most experienced kayaker could be momentarily vulnerable when interacting with wildlife capable of immense strength, rapid decision-making, and unexpected curiosity. Samantha returned to the fjords months later for further photography, this time maintaining a deliberate distance, observing from a secure position and respecting the orca's space while documenting their social behavior. The encounter remained vivid in her memory. The sudden surge, the circling predator, the icy shock of the water, and the realization that intelligence and sheer size could converge in a moment to create both awe and danger. Her experience underscored a fundamental truth for anyone venturing into wild waters. Respect, caution, and readiness are essential, even for those who consider themselves skilled and prepared.